afraid of the dark.
The story is based on a diary I found in my new apartment. Whether to believe it or not, I don't know. I'm writing in the style of fiction. I'm writing from the author's perspective. It happened back in 1998 when technology was low level, and the author experienced a horrifying story that still makes me wake up in cold sweat at night. The author was an ordinary teenager, studying in 9th grade, trying to devote as much time as possible to studying on weekdays and hanging out with friends on weekends. Fortunately, his parents' work schedule allowed him to do so often. On those days, friends would gather at his apartment and watch various horror movies, war movies, love stories, and so on a VCR, if you remember. Those were in the 90s. But then came the moment when they had watched all the tapes available and needed to buy a new one. They agreed to pool money together for a tape, contributing what each could. That's where the story begins. May 11th, 1998, from the author's words.
The next day, I decided to skip school and go check out the latest movies. To my great disappointment, the store where they were sold turned out to be closed. With a heavy heart, I walked along the sidewalk, hoping to make it to the third lesson. After walking a couple of 100 meters quickly, I slowed down as I noticed something in the distance that caught my attention. I saw a kiosk that I had never seen in this area before. I approached it, and to my surprise, it was a mobile trailer kiosk, and wonder of wonders, it had tapes. Well, there is justice in this world, after all, flashed through my mind. I started looking through the window with tinted glass at the available goods, but to my disappointment, the selection was scarce, or rather, there was none at all. There were only 7 tapes lined up, nothing remarkable about them except the packaging. I debated for a long time whether it was worth the risk to buy one of these tapes, but in the end, I made my choice. I knocked on the kiosk window waiting for a response, but there was none, so I knocked again. A rough male voice came from the other side.
What do you want?
I would like to buy a tape from you, I replied.
What tape?
I heard a hint of sarcasm in his rough voice. Are you making fun of me, I thought. I couldn't see his face, but for some reason at that moment, I imagined a picture of a fat, pimply, clumsy oaf. I wanted to leave, but curiosity got the better of me. You have 7 tapes lined up on the shelf. I wanted to finish this conversation quickly.
$25.
The voice said, now without laughter. I silently handed the money through the window, and to my surprise, all 7 tapes ended up in my hands. I headed home with a satisfied look on my face. At that time, I had no idea why I'd had it over $25 on that fateful day. On the way home, I pondered what could be on these tapes, some cheap trash, or some movie that flopped at the box office, or maybe an adult home movie. What am I thinking after 10 minutes? I stood at the door of my apartment with a bag full of tapes. Entering the hallway, I took off my sneakers and rushed into the room where the VCR stood. Dumping the tapes on the floor, I started examining the contents of the packages. It turned out that all the tapes were numbered and called Day 1, Day 2, and so on. All except the last tape. There were no recordings on it. I took the tape labeled Day 1 and inserted it into the VCR. I turned on the TV and started watching. A simple school notebook with 12 sheets appeared on the screen. The name of the student, class number, and school number were clearly written on the notebook in neat handwriting. Then the notebook disappeared from the screen and amateur camera footage appeared. At first, the city where the filming took place was shown, the surroundings of the city, and so on. I didn't recognize the city. It was winter on the film and it was evening outside. About 5 to 6 o'clock approximately. The camera made characteristic up and down movements as usual when a person is filming while walking. Suddenly it turned towards some bushes and stopped. It seemed that the filming was now taking place in a park. The camera focused on a playground where several school-aged children were playing. The children gradually dispersed and the camera didn't take its eyes off them. Until the last child left the playground. I wanted to turn off this nonsense, but then the camera started moving again. She began to follow the last child's footsteps. And with each step, the camera drew closer and closer. There it was, already behind him. You could see a man's hand reaching towards the child's back. Suddenly, the recording cut off. The next frame horrified me. I wanted to turn off the recording, burn the tapes, forget what I had seen. But I didn't. In the next frame, the same child appeared. I recognized him by his jacket. The child lay in the snow, lifeless. But the recording didn't end there. The next frame showed the same child, but now he was sitting at a table doing homework. He smiled at the camera, waved, then stood up and joyfully approached the camera. His eyes sparkled with happiness. The recording cut off again. Next, the camera showed the same child sitting at another table in a completely different place, but now he wasn't doing homework. He was dead. And his frozen face was turned towards the camera. A rough male voice could be heard off screen.
That's what happens to those who linger in the park and don't listen to their parents. Say hi to your dad, who, drunk, gave me the recording with you in the starring role.
That's where the first tape ends. Oh God, how awful, it tore me apart. I wanted to believe it was a montage, a setup, anything but the truth. The first thought that came to my mind was to go to the police. They had to find this scum, they had to. And then I remembered the all too familiar voice on the tape. I inserted the tape again, rewound it to the end, listened again. It was exactly the voice from the trailer kiosk. Panic engulfed me. Oh my God, I didn't know what to do. I was afraid for my life. Because if the tape was true, then I had signed my own death warrant. $25, yes, that's now the value of my life. Think, show it to someone? But is it worth it? What if the person I show it to blabs? Then it's the end for me. Maybe the scum is already watching me. After all, he saw my face. Damn, I decided not to do anything. I hid the tapes at home in a secure place, where I usually hid cigarettes. The rest of the day went as bad as it could. I was afraid of every noise, watched what was happening outside the window. Cigarettes disappeared one after another, and when there was a knock on the door, I almost went crazy. But fortunately, it wasn't a maniac with a knife behind the door, it was my friend Andrew. He came to see how I was doing and why I hadn't come to school today. Unfortunately, I had to lie. I told him I was sick and would stay home for a couple of days. We talked for a while and I felt a little better. But when Andrew left, I felt uneasy again. I lay in bed trying unsuccessfully to fall asleep when there was a knock on the door. No, it can't be. He can't know where I live. Okay, stay calm. I'm home, so I'm safe. At least for now, I just need to ignore it. And again the knock. And again and again. My nerves couldn't take this pressure. I jumped out of bed and headed to the door. "Who's there?" I asked.
Hi, it's me. Remember we were supposed to go for a walk in the evening?
A female voice replied. I felt relieved beyond measure. With these ridiculous thoughts about the psychomaniac, I completely forgot that I had promised Emma to go for a walk on Monday. I glanced at the clock. It was almost 11. I opened the door. "Hi, Emma. Sorry for not opening earlier. I'm just sick." "Let's sit at my place instead," I said. The answer came immediately.
Okay.
Emma entered the apartment. We went to the kitchen. I put on the kettle. We started talking. Emma is a very good friend, but a terrible gossip, and she immediately puts an end to any attempts to flirt, referring to higher feelings than mere liking. In short, we drank tea and I, so that Emma would stay longer. I really didn't want to be alone, suggested watching a movie. To my joy, she agreed. She also didn't forget to mention that I promised to buy a new tape. I mumbled something in response, and in the end, everything ended well. We spent a long time deciding which movie to watch. Emma insisted on Evil Dead, and I wanted to watch Gilmore Girls. In the end, we decided to watch the movie The Mask with Jim Carrey in the lead role. During the movie, I tried to touch Emma's knee, for which I got slapped a couple of times. Why is she so stubborn? An hour and a half later, the movie ended. I suggested watching something else, but Emma, citing the late hour, started getting ready to leave. It was indeed 2 a.m. At such a late hour, I couldn't let her go alone. I started getting ready to leave with her. At first she was against it, but then she agreed. As we were leaving the house, I forgot my pack of cigarettes, but I didn't go back. Emma lived on the other side of town. But since our town is small, a 30-minute walk, and here we are already standing at her entrance. We said goodbye. I kissed her on the cheek. She smiled and went home. I hurried home, desperate for a smoke. Damn it. I picked up the pace, trying not to think about the tape, but that wasn't enough, because a few blocks from my house I froze. Ahead, about 30 meters away, under the lamppost stood a man. And it's 3 a.m. in our backwater town. I collected my thoughts and headed straight for the lamppost.
Can't find a light?
The voice was nothing like the voice from the tape. I felt relieved. I'm looking for one too, I replied and continued on, while the man continued to stand under the lamppost. Getting home, I took a shower and went to bed. I dreamed of the boy from the tape. He was crying and begging not to kill him. I woke up, feeling hungover and depressed. The time was 6 a.m. I had only slept for 2.5 hours. No wonder I felt so awful. Well, since that's the case, I'll go to school today. Thoughts of the tape faded away on their own. My mind refused to accept what I saw on the screen as truth. I had breakfast and headed to the first lesson. The day at school went poorly. I got a D in chemistry, which won't please my parents. I walked home slowly, examining the shop windows. I noticed a skateboard deck that caught my eye. I had been dreaming of one for a long time. When I reached home, I entered the lobby and checked our mailbox. A letter. From whom? There was absolutely nothing written on the envelope. Strange. I went up to my floor, entered the apartment, threw my backpack, and went into my room. I opened the envelope and started reading aloud. Hello, Robert. How did you like my film? Have you already watched the first cassette? If yes, then don't hesitate, insert the second one and enjoy the show. But I warn you not a word to anyone. A lump rose in my throat. I reread the letter again. I couldn't believe my eyes. How? When? Of course. I remembered yesterday the man by the lamppost, but what does it have to do with this? Thoughts stormed my head, my temples throbbed, my hands shook with fear. It seems I have no choice. Cassette number 2. I retrieved the packet of tapes from my hiding place, found the right one, and inserted it into the VCR. The screen showed a familiar school notebook with 12 sheets, the same handwriting as the first notebook. The student's name, class number, and school. The camera lens again showed the city surroundings. I couldn't say for sure if it was the same city, but the buildings were different. It was spring outside, early morning, and children were hurrying to school. The camera moved towards the smoking area, usually a place not far from the school but hidden from the teacher's eyes, often located behind the garages or around the corner of the school. The camera froze in the bushes behind the garage. After a couple of minutes, a pretty slim girl, about 17 years old, appeared in the frame, a blonde. She took out a cigarette and lit it. As soon as the girl turned her back, the camera started moving. The girl noticed a strange noise behind her, turned around, tried to call for help, but it was already too late. The recording cut off. The next frame. The girl is tied to a chair next to a dead boy. The boy's body had decomposed and resembled a desiccated mummy. The girl was breathing. Her eyes were covered, her mouth taped shut. A man appeared in the frame. He wore a mask. He had an athletic build, dressed in military uniform. He removed the tape and asked,
"Are you a virgin?"
The girl remained silent. Then the man untied the girl's eyes. The girl screamed hysterically, and I won't describe what I saw next. I'll quote only the words of that bastard.
"Girls, quit smoking. Think about your children."
The recording ended. There. I don't know how much time passed before I regained the ability to move. I lit a cigarette. His cruelty no longer surprised me. I resigned myself to everything that was happening on the screen. I don't know.
Following in the diaries a gap of several days.
For May 16th, 1998. Forgive me, diary, but this is unbearable. How tired I am of looking at these atrocities. What does he want to achieve? Every day I had to watch one tape a day. Those were his conditions. Now I understand the meaning of the titles Day 1, Day 2, whatever they mean. Today it's time for the tape titled Day 6. I ponder what he will surprise me with this time. So, what could be there? I'm going crazy. I lit a cigarette. Today my friend should come to watch a movie, but I'll say that the VCR burned out. And we'll just go for a walk, and in the evening I'll watch the 6th tape. At 7 p.m. my friends arrived, Andrew, Emma, and a couple of others. Initially I said that the VCR burned out. At first they scolded me, but then it seemed like everything calmed down and we went for a walk. We wandered around the city, went to a cafe, drank beer, and were already about to leave when Andrew called me over.
Robert, come here for a word. We need to talk.
I approached.
Robert, what's wrong with you? You're not yourself. Something happened?
Andrew asked cautiously. No, everything's fine, just didn't sleep well. And things aren't working out with Emma, I replied.
I don't believe you. Tell the truth.
He insisted. I didn't know what to say. To tell the truth now and make a fool of myself. In the end, I said, come tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. I'll tell you and show you everything, I replied.
Okay.
Andrew replied. We left the cafe and headed home. As usual, I walked Emma home and then went home myself. Again, various thoughts attacked my head. I walked as if in a daze. I didn't know if I was going home or just walking in circles until a sharp pain in my ankle brought me back to reality. I lifted my foot and discovered that I had torn the sole of my sneakers along with part of the heel. I hobbled home. Automatically, I retrieved the letter from the mailbox, went inside, treated the wound, read the letter, which mentioned something about the finish line. I threw away the letter and inserted the 6th cassette. I glanced at the clock. It was 12:30. Cassette number 6. Another notebook. The student's name, class number, and school. Stop. Oh no, I know him. He's the guy who disappeared without a trace 6 months ago. My God, this can't be happening. He lived in the neighboring town. We played for the same hockey club. It can't be. It can't. On the film, I see the outlines of a familiar city. These streets are familiar to me. I've been here before. It's autumn outside, midday. The camera captures our sports complex directly from the bushes opposite the entrance. Students from the hockey section are coming out. We're the last ones to come out, me and Tim. Oh God, oh God. No, Tim, please. We say goodbye at the entrance and go our separate ways. I briefly notice my reflection in the camera lens. I seem to have noticed it, but I turn and walk away, and the camera starts following Tim. This time I'm really scared because my friend is in the camera lens. He catches up with Tim in an abandoned alley where he went to pee. I don't want to talk about what that scumbag did to Tim. To fall asleep, I had to drink 200 grams of vodka. I can't believe this is happening to me. May 17th, 1998. I watched all the tapes. The 7th and final one this morning. It was empty. Andrew should come tonight. I'll show him everything, and we'll come up with something together. But for now, I'll go for a walk. I wandered around the city, visited Ellie, we talked. Having had enough walking, I returned home. Out of habit, I checked the mailbox. My legs weakened with horror. Instead of the usual letter, there was a cassette in the mailbox. I had no idea how it got there. The cassette had the inscription Day 7. I inserted the cassette and was horrified. There was no notebook. Instead, my passport photo filled the entire screen. I swallowed the lump in my throat. The streets of our city appeared. The next frame, me hugging Emma, then me sitting in a bar, and finally me leaving the entrance of my house for today's walk. Out of fear, I gathered all the tapes into a pile and burned them right in the kitchen. I crushed the remnants and flushed them down the toilet. I'll hide the diary here, where I kept the tapes and cigarettes, under the wooden floor, which I dismantled specifically for this purpose. There's a knock on the door, probably Andrew. Now we'll come up with something together.
This is the last entry in the diary. I found it in one of the rooms when I was replacing the old floors. Nothing is known about the continuation of the story. Something about a family living, and then they all disappeared together.